very much for tuning in to East West. And this month, I'm with my friend Philip Shah from Canada. And we're going to talk about a new issue that is popping up, which is particularly linked to what Phil does. We all know he's farming and he's a big grain farmer in Canada. So in his case, he was pointing out during our discussion that the freight charge around the world is going up. So let us listen to Phil and try to find out what is going on in the freight market around the world, so that the freight charges of shipping goods, particularly bulky products like corn, soybeans, wheat, is significantly going up. So Phil.
Well, thanks, Anamel. And I am Philip Shaw from Dresden, Ontario. Nice to join everybody on East West again this month. It's interesting from my perspective as a farmer and agricultural economist. I talk about agricultural commodity prices all the time over here and write about it all the time. But increasingly, what we're finding is that the cost of transportation, and it's mostly, a lot of it is related to COVID, has increased significantly for the movement of goods. And whether it's the movement of goods, whether it's agricultural commodities or any commodity for that matter, as well as finished goods out of China into the United States and into Europe. And I imagine the same thing's true with textiles out of Bangladesh into Europe as well. But these things have increased, and so it's obviously going to have an effect on the demand of things. It might even have an effect on inflation. But like, for instance, a lot of agricultural commodities move by vessel, because typically that's the most cost-effective way to move commodities and goods, and that has increased to some extent in China from North America. That is quadrupled and quintupled and even more in the last year. Shortages of containers and different things of that nature. So that's having an effect on everyone, because eventually the cost is borne by the consumer, and it's going to affect employment all the way along the line. You would think eventually.
Now, do you know what are the reasons? Any guesswork from your point of view, because you are working in this particular area, you do many commentaries on agriculture.
Well, part of the reasoning that I understand is that demand has risen because we may not be in a post-COVID world yet worldwide. But in certain parts of the world, like Western Europe and the United States, maybe even China to some extent, and Canada, we are almost in a post-COVID world, or we're going from a pandemic to something that is endemic within us, where we'll have to live with COVID. So the demand for some of these products have increased significantly, and that's about the best reason that I've got why freight rates and just the movement of goods has increased a lot, and there's shortages as well of
shipping slowdowns are happening everywhere.
We are all connected, so if one major port goes down, it literally impacts the whole sum of all the parts.
Disruptions from the COVID-19 pandemic hit port after port, with the aftershocks hitting the consumer market.
There's a scarcity of capacity of ships. There's a scarcity of empty containers, which we have never seen before.
$5,000 to put it on a ship and send it somewhere. Some carriers are now charging even more than that, calling it a peak season surcharge, usually several hundred more dollars per container. And even at that high price, the containers are short in supply. The problem is that shipping containers usually move back and forth along the same route, but interruptions to international trade caused by COVID-19 now mean that many containers ship off to one port and then get stuck there.
Demand has outstripped supply, so ocean freight costs have spiked. It's extremely expensive. To ship a container from Asia to the U.S. West Coast, for example, is triple what it was.
I can see your point. Actually, this is, but and I'm trying to understand whether this is linked to COVID. One reason then I can see is that let's assume that North America, for example, or Europe has recovered because of the vaccination from the COVID. So, if you are sending products to any part of the other world, which is, let's say, Asia, which is still suffering from COVID, The two-way container demand may not be same. That's one issue, which means, and not only that, that you may be sending products from this side to your side, but on the other hand, our import has reduced in many cases because economic activities are not working. So
That's
that is probably that is one reason why I can see globally the COVID has indirectly affected the price of the container transportation. The other one I'm trying to think through, and I'm not sure whether I'm right. But the second reason that I can see is that the dollar supply has gone up. So if you look into the global world right now, because it's all done in dollar, and the total dollar supply printing is like roughly about, if you look into the last 24 months, I think it's about 4 trillion new printed money. So if you have significant amount of dollar printed, which brings inflation in, and the moment
Yes.
inflation in there, that might be the second reason that I can see for the rise in the container, in the freight, and that is a more dangerous one because that is probably going to stay for long unless the Americans stop printing dollars. So I'm talking from that. The third one, I'm not sure whether that is important, but the third one is that if you see global conflict around the world, particularly South China Sea, which is also an issue, I'm not sure, but my hunch is insurance price may go up in areas of conflict if you ship through the channels which are in the conflict zone. But this part, I'm not sure whether South China Sea has raised the insurance. I don't think it has, but any conflict around the shipping lines will increase the insurance cost probably. And that will further increase the transportation cost. So my feeling, and I'm not, again, I'm not an expert on that area. My feeling probably two. One is that we have a container who is actually, let's say it came to Bangladesh, and Bangladesh for the last 15 days, we have not released them because we have not unloaded them yet because of the lockdown. So a lot of containers are held up around different ports around the world. That is probably one of the reasons that you just say that container shortages. So that might be one. The second one is that our import is another example. Our import has significantly dropped because of COVID. Export is there. We are exporting products to the open market, particularly because of the COVID-free scenario in Europe and America, which are our export destination. So we are sending more, but bringing less. And that particularly means shipping lines need to think about how to distribute their cost, because the cost on both way are not same. The income from both way are not same. So I think that these are perhaps some of the reasons that might have pushed it.
I cannot remember what the cost of that stuck container ship in the Suez Canal was, but it was a significant cost, not only to that container ship, but to everybody that was waiting to get through the Suez Canal at that time.
Exactly.
There's the other aspect of this, so I talked about the increase of demand for agricultural products or food products into Asia. But there's other aspects of this, like for instance, in Russia, they're trying to encourage the transportation of goods across the Northeastern Passage above Russia from Europe to Asia. And, from a Canadian perspective, we think about the Northwest Passage all the time, but it's very cold there and very dark there in winter. Mm-hmm. And it's hard to imagine something like the Northeast Passage working to free up another transportation lane. I suppose it's all a puzzle with regard to transportation costs around the world, whether it's a container ship stuck in the Suez Canal, whether it's Russian movement in the Northeast Passage, or whatever it is. But transportation costs, they're kind of the lubrication of what makes the global economy move.
But that's also going to increase if you look into the transportation costs going up, the food price around the world will also go up. Mm-hmm. That's another issue that we should be thinking forward. Food price, product prices will go up. Something I don't think the world is now ready, because the whole COVID has drained the income of many people around the world. So I can see a second crisis as the COVID is lingering. the crisis is creeping up. And I think the world economy looks like, to me, should be careful in dealing with it, particularly. Hopefully, we don't end up with another new conflict, because some of the conflict, particularly Afghanistan, has gone down, and that might have taken some benefit. Similarly, that the conflict in Iraq looks like Iraq is also another one that is going down. So if it all ease up, probably there will be some benefit to it in the global transportation lines.
Well, and not only that, but you know, if COVID ever ends, you know, because as you know, COVID is everywhere, and I think we said before, we all have to get vaccinated in order to get by this thing. The transportation cost issue might be part of it. You know, it might be part of it. And so, yes, geopolitical tensions will matter with regard to lessening transportation costs over time, and hopefully they will. But we have to get by. We have to get by COVID as well to make this thing smooth out a little bit more.
Yes, thank you, Phil. This is interesting, because I was not aware of it. You know, I think you were the one who flagged this issue particularly, and I can see it is linked to your crop prices. Is it affecting the crop price in the?
Yes, it is. It is, especially like, for instance, the cost of shipping soybeans from Ontario, Canada to China has quadrupled and quintupled and gone up even higher. So typically, what that will mean is a reduction in demand over here. We still haven't seen that quite yet, but it's clear that the Chinese are trying to reduce their imports of North American products. We talked a few weeks ago with Andrew Pan. He talked about how computer chips, how global trade is based on trust, and that after the problems between China and the United States over steel and aluminum, now there's a shortage of computer chips because the Chinese, partly reason because the Chinese are keeping them for themselves. So, you know, this is all intertwined, and transportation costs are all part of it. They're part of it even at the best of times. It's just that when they really change, it's kind of lubrication for the global economy.
The other part I'm trying to understand is, I think, just from my point of view, which is the trade relationship between Australia and China, because that was a lot of movement there, and that has snapped because of the tension between China and Australia. Do you think anything has to do with this transportation routes on that?
No, I really don't think so, even though that does affect the world barley market. Like, for instance, there's tension between Canada and China as well. But we're between the United States, and over here we know who to support for our best interests. And the Chinese cut off barley imports simply as because of the criticism that Australia was giving China, and they're simply getting feed grains from other places. And right now they're replacing their corn that's fed in their hogs with feed wheat that's coming in. So and transportation affects all of that, and high transportation. Costs affect that as well. But China's a growing economy, as you know, a huge population as well. Well, Asia in general, and you know, so this is going to keep up to some extent.
Thank you, Phil. This is, I think, for all of us, it's an interesting one, because many people were not aware of this behind-the-scene movement on transportation cost, how it has been growing. You just mentioned this quadruple, which is a significant rise, almost. You know, it's a large rise in transportation cost, and probably economies, particularly Asian economies, which are all consumer-driven economies, demand-driven economies. Lots of people here. These economies import a lot of products, and I think these governments should also be aware of this influence or impact of this kind of transportation cost increasing on the product prices. Okay, thank you, Phil. Thank you, Phil.
Thank you very much, and we'll look forward to next month.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Please subscribe to this channel to receive updates on new videos.